Happy Monday. Oh, there's something on my screen. What's up, guys? Happy Monday. It's a new week. And I am starting off this week hitting the ground running. I had leg day. I had a protein shake. I took a shower. I did my hair. And my friend Ollie from Hong Kong is actually here in Oxford. And let me tell you, all of my friends in England live in London or in other parts of the UK, and no one ever comes to Oxford. Usually, as you've seen in these vlogs, if I'm meeting somebody, I will go to London to meet them. And so it's so rare that people come through Oxford, even though it's like an important city in England. Ollie is coming through because he's traveling through the UK, his family is here, and I guess he's going to see family members in Oxford, which is exciting. And so we're gonna get lunch. I can't wait to catch up with him. I have not seen him in 10 months, and my team in Hong Kong, the editorial team at Tatler Asia, it was full of the best people, and I'm so excited that so many of them are very international. They travel a lot. A lot of them have roots here in England, and so I'm just so happy to be able to see him and catch up. Hello, good morning. It is Tuesday, and I'm drinking an energy drink because I've been up since 5 a.m. My interview this morning with Amazon was at 7 a.m. It was a phone interview, and I think it went okay. I think it went well. I think I did my best. But after the interview, I did think about it for a few hours, and I did something that I've only done once ever before in my career. And the last time I did it was maybe 13, 14 years ago. I emailed the recruiter and I withdrew my application for the role. I'm not gonna go into too much detail about it, but what I will say is that the thing that's important to remember for anyone out there who is searching for a job and who has options and who doesn't need to have a job right away, I think something that's really important to remember is that the job interview is not a one-way street. It is not an opportunity only for the employer to evaluate you as an employee. A job interview is also an opportunity for you as a prospective employee to evaluate if this is an employer or supervisor or team that you want to work with or for. Does that make sense? Obviously, there are circumstances and economies and situations where people may not have the luxury of picking and choosing between jobs, because let's all face it, we've all been in the situation where you need a paycheck. But if you can choose, and if you feel in your gut that this may not be the right situation for you or the right supervisor or the right team, then it is okay to recuse yourself from the process. That's something I had to remind myself today. I am now thinking about taking myself out to lunch because not only is doing a job interview stressful, but deciding to not proceed with something that you've wanted for quite a long time is also kind of a stressful situation. What's up, guys? I am back from lunch and I realized like 10 minutes ago that I am so out of it that I didn't even film my lunch. I mean, it's not that exciting to film food, but sometimes I'll take like a few seconds of video. And I think I'm out of it, not totally because I've been up since 5 a.m. and I had kind of a stressful morning, but I think it's because I have made the decision, and I told my family already, I've made the decision to move back to New York in the next month or two. This is something that I didn't think would happen when I moved to England at the end of 2020. I thought that I would come here right at the end of the pandemic, look for a job in England, and potentially set up a home base here, which I still really want to do. But the reality is that I've interviewed for so many roles here, And I'm realizing that because 95% of my career happened in New York and all of my professional network is in New York, it is really hard to start from scratch here. Even though people look at my resume and my CV and they can see what I've done and they know these huge brands that I've worked with, and that I've grown, that I've scaled, that I've relaunched and developed, it's different when you're not in your city. So I've decided to move back and resume my career and my life in my hometown where I grew up, and where all my stuff is, actually, because all of my stuff is still in my apartment in New York. So this morning when I woke up at like 5:30 in the morning, the first thought in my mind was the realization that I might not be able to go back to New York at least any time in the next few weeks. And the reason is taxes. Taxes have completely taken over my life lately, if you hadn't noticed. So this is sort of a coda/sequel to my video last week where I talked a little bit about the American expat IRS tax ecosystem, where if you are an American citizen or a green card holder, you have to pay taxes no matter where you earn your money or live in the world for the rest of your life, unless you give up your citizenship. Now, one of the key things about these laws is that you need to prove that you don't live in the US. And there are a few ways to do that. There's something called the bona fide residence thing that doesn't apply to me. And then there's the other way that a lot of people who live abroad use to prove that they don't live in the United States and they don't earn their income in the US, and that is called the physical presence test. Now, the physical presence test just means that you need to be able to prove that within a 12-month period, you were outside of the United States for 330 days. If you were outside of the United States for 330 days, and you earned all your money outside of the United States, then you can qualify for these rules, all these rules that the IRS has set up for American expats. This was probably the only non-complicated part of my 2020 taxes because of all this stuff that's going on, and because you couldn't really travel in and out of Hong Kong. I was just in Hong Kong for all of 2020 until the very last 2 weeks when I moved to England. However, a couple of months ago, when Boris Johnson finally announced that people could travel back and forth between the UK and the US without having to quarantine on the way back, I decided to finally go see my family and friends in New York after not seeing them for 2 years. I used 24 days to do that. So if I have to prove that I was outside of the country for 330 days in this tax year, that means that I can only have been in the US for a maximum of 35 days. And I used 24 days to do that trip, which means I only have 14 days left to be in the United States before I'm taxed as a full resident. Now, what I'm trying to figure out, and I've read a lot of things online this morning, and I'm going to continue doing research, is whether the 330 days need to be within one fiscal year, January to December. I think maybe it doesn't, from a lot of the legal stuff I've read online. If the 330 days do not have to fall within the exact January to December 2021 calendar year, that gives me a lot more flexibility to decide when I get to pack up and go home to New York. But if the 330 days does have to fall within the calendar year, then I'm here until December. So there's a lot of stuff that I really need to figure out pretty much ASAP, either today or yesterday, basically. So I'm gonna work on that. I have one more podcast to edit. Tonight, Andy and I are recording an episode for another podcast project, not Chinese Food Fight Club. I'll talk more about the second project at a later date. So there's a lot going on right now. So I'm glad I'm keeping busy and I'm not spending too much time stressing out about this tax stuff. Honestly, taxes in the US are so complicated compared to so many other places. In Hong Kong, for example, at the end of the fiscal year, your company submits all of your income statements to the taxation department, and the tax department there just issues you a bill. And you can pay it, or you can set up a payment plan, or you can take out a loan from your bank. There are so many different options. I have never heard of another country where once a year, all of its citizens have to sit down, hire someone, or try to figure out all this really complicated paperwork to take a stab at what their taxes might be, pay an amount that they determine themselves or their accountant determines for them, and then potentially get in trouble for getting the math test wrong. It seems wild to me. This is my podcast setup. I use shoe boxes to keep things higher. Conveniently, a Gucci shoebox is the exact height for the microphone to be in front of my face. Every time I have to move, and I've moved a lot over the last 3 years, I have this idea that I want to become a minimalist, and I don't really want to become a minimalist. I wouldn't consider myself a maximalist either. I know maximalists, and I'm not a maximalist. I'm sort of a middleist, the same way my channel seems to be veering towards midlife, mid-career. I'm a mid-sized person, and I have like a middling amount of stuff. But every time I move, I think to myself, you know what? I actually only really wear 2 pairs of shoes on a regular basis, and I only carry 2 of my bags on a regular basis, and I really only wear a rotating selection of 6 or 7 pieces of clothing. Why can't I whittle all of my stuff down to just those things? And I have thought a lot about this question over the past few years. I was always the person who would be able to go to Paris Fashion Week for an entire week, or Milan Fashion Week for an entire week as a fashion editor with just one carry-on bag. I was always so proud that I was able to do that. And when I travel, if I have to travel for work, I'm able to get everything into one roll-on and maybe one backpack. If I have to bring cameras, computer equipment, and my clothes, shoes, all that stuff. But I think as I've gotten slightly older and I've just naturally accumulated more better stuff and I have less throwawayable stuff, it's harder and harder to get rid of things knowing that I probably will want or need them in 3 months or 6 months time. I have like 3 serious winter coats that are temperature graded until like minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and 2 of them are in New York and I have 1 of them here in England. And the reason I have 1 in England is because when I got here last year, I moved here from Hong Kong where it's never really that cold. So I never brought my winter coats to Hong Kong. So I had to repurchase a winter coat as soon as I got here. I wore it for maybe 2.5, 3 months, and it's been sitting in the closet ever since. But I'm not gonna get rid of it because it was expensive, because winter coats are expensive, but also because I'll probably need it again for 3 months in 2 months' time. I was thinking a lot about this winter coat because it takes up pretty much one entire check-in suitcase. The same goes for things like books, which are really heavy and hard to cart around from country to country. At least in the States, if you're moving in between states, you can ship your books book rate through the mail, and it's not that expensive, but getting things from Hong Kong to England and then from England back to New York, really, really difficult. Sure, I have an e-reader and I read a lot of fiction and contemporary bestsellers on my e-reader, but there are also a lot of books that I need to get in print. So books from the 80s for research, for back reading, books from the 90s, books from the 70s, academic books. These are not always available on a Kindle. And to be honest, it's really kind of hard. I find it a little bit difficult to use reference books on a Kindle. Recently, for example, I've bought a lot of Chinese food, culture, anthropology, history, and just general storytelling and recipe books because Andy and I are launching a Chinese food podcast. But a lot of these books were really hard to find. They're out of print. I had to buy them secondhand. I had to have them shipped from universities, from special collections. And now I'm in the position where I have to cart them back to New York. So these are all things I've been thinking about today, yesterday, randomly over the past 3 years. I guess there's nothing that I can do about it. Also, I'm moving back into my apartment in New York, which is already full of my stuff because, to be honest, when I moved to Hong Kong, I only moved with clothes. So everything additional that I've accumulated, another ukulele, some houseware products, an entire new wardrobe, new accessories, beauty products, all of this has to fit back into a life that I already have. Good morning, it's Friday. It's just coming up on midday right now. I'm here with my first coffee of the day. I did have an energy drink this morning because I went to the gym to do steps, it was hard to do. It's hard to go to the gym on the days that I'm not training because I train 3 days a week. But I have found that doing more steps over the past few weeks and getting back into my habit of at least trying to hit 10,000 steps a day, and I often don't make 10,000 steps a day, it really helps me feel better. It helps my progress in terms of fat loss, etc. After I went to the gym, I had to go drop my keys off at the real estate agency. One of the added complexities of moving away from England is that they have to start showing my apartment. And yes, I get it, like it has to be done, but it's annoying. Thankfully, they seem to be really considerate and have scheduled the appointments kind of late in the morning and all grouped together. So at least I don't have to be in and out of my apartment all day long. I am a little bit nervous about all of my stuff here. Thankfully, I think like 30% of my things are currently packed. I did go on a mini packing frenzy over the weekend and just put away all the clothes that I haven't worn in a year because I've had no occasion to wear them. I've put them in suitcases. Everything is sort of ready to go. But I am nervous about things like my electronical equipment and cameras and computer stuff. So I have to figure out a way to hide them or just put them somewhere where no one will feel like tempted to, I don't know. I'm sure it'll be fine. I did wind up taking myself out to breakfast this morning at my personal favorite breakfast place in town. It's Brown's in the Covered Market. In case you ever come to Oxford, I highly recommend it. I think I am starting to feel a little bit sad about leaving Oxford. This happens all the time though, so don't worry. Even when I was living in New York forever and I would come to Oxford just on vacation or as a stopover on my way to or from somewhere, I would always feel sad leaving. To me, this is the place that I would love to live long term, but what I've realized about this year is that it was such a great place for me to be at this point in the pandemic, but for my career, I don't think this is the place for me right now. So part of me, I don't know how to say this, part of me feels so disappointed, partly in myself, and then partly, I don't know, not in myself, but I don't know in what. It just disappointed in general that I wasn't able to materialize a business out of thin air in the past 6 months and make it profitable and sustainable. And I'm doing it in the funny voice because I think the other side of me is like, why on earth do you think you would be able to materialize the business out of thin air and make it sustainable and profitable in a matter of 6 months? So yeah, that's just where my mind's at. I think there's a lot of stuff on social media and obviously a lot of stuff on YouTube about you can make $10,000 a month overnight by doing these things on the internet. And the reality is that it's probably not true. There was one piece of advice that I read recently, I think maybe on LinkedIn, that I found really helpful in terms of not only adjusting my LinkedIn profile, but also my sense of self and understanding what I've been doing over the past 6 months. 6 months is actually not that long of a time to take a sabbatical after 20 years of working, but it feels like a really long gap in my career, especially in the middle of my career. I think it's understandable. I think in my industry, everybody has had a break here and there because there have been personal pivots to different platforms, people doing more creative things, people going off on their own. For me, I really just needed a few months of rest in the summer and a few months to really gather my thoughts and figure out what I wanted to do next and what was feasible. While I was off, I did do some branded content work for Glamour. I did a bunch of fashion writing, which I have not done in so long, but I did fashion writing for SSAW magazine, a beautiful biannual fashion magazine based out of Paris. And for me, work-wise, over the past few months, I do think one of the biggest highlights has been working with my good friend Andy in LA to start this podcast / platform that we've literally been talking about starting for 10 years. In addition to that, we've had such an amazing opportunity to work with the mayor's office in the city of Los Angeles on creating an AAPI stories-driven podcast for their AAPI task force, which is so exciting, and all of that is in progress right now. So I guess it all goes to show that even though it feels weird to be working in isolation and to have technically taken the last 6 months off, I feel like I've done stuff and learned things about myself, learned how to do things, had a tremendous trajectory of growth just from recording the first season of our Chinese Food Fight Club podcast. And even if it doesn't go anywhere, it was so fun to work on. And we are definitely doing several more seasons just because it's one of the few things I've done in several years that feels really gratifying and really satisfying, and it really creates that human connection. Despite the fact that we're thousands of miles apart, it's helped me meet people and talk to people and learn from people that I would not have normally gotten a chance to meet. Okay, I moved my desk back on dining table back into its old spot because I think they would probably prefer it in this spot for the viewing tomorrow. I also looked at my calendar and realized that tonight's podcast recording with LA is not going to happen until 9 p.m. my time, which seems like it could be fine, except I usually go to bed like 10 or 10:30. So I'm gonna have to find a way to stay awake and alert until 9:30 at the very earliest. I think my plan will be strategic caffeine consumption. So last time I went home, my dad's baseball cap from his old college at Oxford looked like really old, so thought I would get him a new one. So I'm going to the Christchurch shop right now. They have a whole shop now. Mission accomplished. What's up, guys? It's Saturday and it's like 9:30. I just did a video walkthrough of my apartment just to film for myself because a real estate agent is coming to show my apartment at 11 and 11:30, and I have to not be here for that, and that actually makes me a little bit nervous. I'm gonna take like my computer or like one of my computers and one of my iPads with me so I can go do some work while I'm away, but obviously it's not humanly possible. I guess it is humanly possible if you had like a truck, but it's not possible to take everything of value out of my home while strangers are here and roaming around and like opening drawers and stuff. Fingers crossed everything is fine. I'm sure everything will be fine. This kind of stuff makes me nervous. But my goal in this and my part in this is to help the agent get this place rented ASAP, so I don't have to keep on doing this every weekend, right? Because like you have to disrupt your entire schedule, your entire life to make sure that everything is like put away in places that you don't normally put things away in, right? I don't normally stash all of my computers and stuff in weird, strange corners of my apartment to hide them from people. Usually I try to set my apartment up so it's way more functional. Okay, I'm gonna start getting my things together so I can go find a coffee shop to do a little bit of work. Thank you so much for watching my weekly vlog. This one was so much talking and this week felt like it went on forever, but I think I'm over my emotional crisis of deciding what's next. I do think New York is next in the cards for me, so that at least that feels settled. I hope you're having a great weekend wherever you are, and I will see you next week.